Hey everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, and if you're wondering where I've been lately and why I haven't been streaming quite as often, I've been playing in a lot of tournaments, which I probably should be streaming those, but usually I wake up like right before they start because they start very early for Americans, and at least my concept of very early. So normally I wake up just in time to get started, and that's about it. But I wanted to kind of show y'all some of the matches that I played. Some of them were good, some of them were bad. I'll go through, especially the best of 3 series. I'll show some of those that are interesting. But I wanted to start with Gabo King. I'll show our first match, and then I guess I'll show our second match next time to keep these videos nice and bite-sized. So let's go ahead and hop into the first Gabo game. For this one, we were playing on a waterlogged map. As you can see here, the Void of Hell Fin is like 95% water. So I took an all skink build, or an all skink type build, you know, Crocodores, you basically count that. And then I took a Solar Engine, a Skink Chief on a Stegodon with the Giant Bow, and then the Pterodon version, and a Heaven Slon. Basically because according to the tournament rules, if your enemy has the ability to shoot at you, you always have to be attacking, essentially. So if you don't have any long-range artillery, then you have to attack, come after us. So as for the specifics of my build, I've got the blue Slon here of the Lore of Heavens, and I brought Harmonic Convergence. I did bring Rolling Skies for debuffs to dragons. I also brought Wind Blast, Curse of the Midnight Wind, Chain Lightning, Blood Statue of Spite, and Aura of Quetzal. So just a really nice series of abilities there for pretty much every situation. Then I do have a Skink Chief on a regular Stegodon, who has Slippery. Nothing else really interesting beside that. And then of course I have the Flying one with no upgrades. As for his build, he has 1, 2, 3 units of Spearmen, 3 units of Phoenix Guard, Teclis, who has... man, one thing I'm jealous of for Teclis is his ability to take multiple lore attributes. Mazdamundi can do that in campaign, but I really wish he could do that in-game, because it'd be super nice. But he's got the Recharge Winds of Magic from Beasts, and then the Ward Save per spell from High Magic. He also has Nets of Ammontok, Enfeebling Foe, Regrowth, the Potion of Troy, looks like the Sword of Teclis, and the Fiery Convocation Bound spell. He also has a Star Dragon, and then, just like Gabo, to have multiple units of Aurelian Reavers all over the place. I think he really likes Aurelian Reavers. He takes them in a lot of games. So, as you can see, almost this entire map is made of water. And one thing a lot of people don't know is that there is an aquatic bonus on units like Skinks and Croxagores. And what that does is it gives them a 120% increase to their melee attack and melee defense so long as they're fighting in water. So basically, this fight is not super short by any means, but you'll just see how ridiculous the Lizardmen can be when they own the field like that. So between the Solar Engine and the Stegodon, I basically just kind of pick units to start picking away at. I start firing the Giant Bow at the Star Dragon because it's fairly accurate and travels at decent speed. But then I'm also firing at the Phoenix Guard, who took a good chunk of health. They lost 5 models to that single laser beam, which every Phoenix Guard down is kind of a big deal. But you can see we're already putting okay damage on the Dragon between the Skink Chief on a Pterodon, who, despite the minus 18 ammo, is still pretty good. And you'll notice I didn't even bother dodging that Dragonfire, because Dragonfire has been very reduced against single model targets. Like, back in last build, that easily would have been like 50% of my health, if not more. All around here, my Chameleon Skinks are essentially just harassing with minor shooting attacks. His Aurelian Reavers are coming in to try and do something, but because I'm in a water feature, this is just not worrisome to me. Like, he's going to hit me here, but even if I wasn't in a water feature, this Stegodon isn't going to give a damn about these Silver Helms. Between the Skink Chief on top and everything else, like, he's just going to wreck these guys. Croxagores and Skinks coming in to support. The main line is moving forward, but I refuse to engage with him until he's dragged down into the water with me. Because I can afford to basically try and out-attrition him. over here and deal with this cav first. Like, I can afford to do that without any concerns. The Skink Chief is staying on the Star Dragon, which is of course pretty rough, but he's popping off a Regrowth to heal it. Which, Regrowth is not a cheap spell, so, I mean, I'm perfectly fine with that. These Aurelian Reavers do come in an attempt to chase these Chameleon Skinks, but between the poison and then the load of Skink cohorts who are going to swarm after them, they're going to take quite a bit of damage for that exchange. And they're just not quite fast enough to make a difference. Crocsgores are chasing off these Aurelian Reavers. These Skinks are rallying back to this Stegodon to help protect them against more. The Dragon has dived in, with Regrowth still going against Bastiladon, who he's popped Enfeebling Foe on. But I've got tons of Skinks swarming all over the place. The Stegodon is still focusing down the Dragon, causing notable and consistent poison along with the Skinks on top of the Bastiladon, who will throw javelins in close combat at the front target like that, and that's doing poison damage. These Silverhelms did try to dive on the Slon, but he's pretty tough with the Aura of Quetzal, which gives him 75 armor and 57 melee defense, which is not insignificant. So once, of course, they've broken off, I sent some Skinks to chase them, and now his real line is coming in. He did try, you'll notice he did try and hit me with the Fiery Convocation, but it's so slow that it's just really easy to, like, move Skinks out of the way, which is exactly what I did. I just moved, even though I was engaged in combat. And it's so slow to cast that it's just too easy to dodge. It has too much of a wind-up animation, even for a spell as powerful as it, which it's really not that powerful. I do have a big spell going down here, I believe is Curse of the Midnight Wind. But you'll notice kind of all over, like, these Skinks normally would lose pretty badly to an Illyrian Reaver charge. But they actually, because they're in this water feature, they have a really notable melee defense. And they're barely taking any damage. Despite being, like, I mean, they got double charged in the flank / rear, and they only took 25% of their health, which is much less than normal. Did pop off a banishment here on a nice packet of Phoenix Guard. Over here, the Phoenix Guard and Spearmen are trying to hold off the Croxagores, but with the melee defense and melee attack bonus they're getting, the Croxagores are just going to absolutely clean house. You know, they're basically working with a melee defense at 150% of, like, I don't know, probably 60 melee attack and 60 melee defense. So they're going to just be absolutely destroying this line. You can see they're taking no damage despite fighting a halberd unit. We got another Curse of the Midnight Wind down, which is a really powerful debuff. Once again, he's diving in on the Slon, but these Chameleon Skinks, after they get up from the charge, are going to butcher the Aurelian Reavers in close combat thanks to the aquatic buff and poison. You know, you'll notice that they're just going to absolutely start falling apart here. And of course, the Slon isn't exactly a slouch in close combat either. He does do a pretty considerable amount of magic damage with 320 weapon strength. The Bastiladon is getting low after Teclis pursued it and a bunch of other stuff, but I am popping cold-blooded on him to keep him around. There's another Regrowth going down on this Dragon, but the Stegodon is going to trade pretty evenly with it because a Skink Chief on a Stegodon is able to fight against Dragons. They'll usually lose in a long engagement, but they can put a beating on them, at the very least. Over here, we get a really nice Wind Blast against the Spearmen and Phoenix Guard, who Phoenix Guard have really good defenses, but most of that defense is wrapped up in their physical resistance. Well, their really stellar defense. I don't know why it keeps defaulting to my Slon when I want to click other stuff. It's very frustrating. But like 30% physical resist, and if you overcast Wind Blast, it does a good amount of armor-piercing damage. Over here, basically, the rest of his line is falling apart. The Phoenix Guard are getting butchered once again by Croxagores. And look at their health overall. There are still 12 models on every single one of these Croxagore units. All of them, despite the fact that they've been fighting consistently against anti-large units this entire time. Armor-piercing anti-large, no less. And at this point, he was kind of making a last-ditch effort to try and catch the Slon, because that's really the only hope he has of winning this game, is to get rid of the leadership, and then maybe cause, like, mass terror and chase stuff off. But the Slon is just a little too fast on his Palanquin, because he does have the Strider special rule, which means that he ignores speed and combat penalties caused by terrain. So all this water feature is slowing down this mass infantry. See, look at this. He gets a direct hit with that ability, and it really, like, it's super long, but even if it catches you, most of the models got back up. It looks like only maybe 3 or 4 chameleons actually died there. But pretty much at this point, the battle is wrapped up. The dragon is still kind of healthy, but he's had at least 3 regrowths popped on him, and was just a huge investment, and just didn't really pay out for it. And the rest of the army is just falling apart. Skink Chief is just harassing Techless, bringing him down, and that's game. So let's go ahead and hop to the end screen here and talk about everything from there. So as you can see, the Croxagores were literally invincible to what the High Elves brought. And there wasn't honestly a whole lot the High Elves could do. I honestly think the only way that they could have traded better with me would have been to bring a ton of Dragon Princes, because Dragon Princes can trade very efficiently with stuff like Croxagores, but it's very difficult in those swamp waters. And Dragon Princes are definitely at the mercy of Slann and Solar Engines, who can do quite a bit of magic damage. But you'll notice that the kills for the Chameleon Skinks was ludicrous, considering a lot of them were in close combat. They were just able to really out-trade the Spearmen and the Aurelian Reavers despite a bunch of amazing charges. These 2 units were the ones that were probably running around the back and getting a lot of like double charges into Skink cohort units. But the Skinks are only worth 300 points, and they were trading significantly above their level. The Dragon didn't get a single kill. I think he did get a chevron from all the fighting, but he didn't get a single kill because he was trying so hard to beat down on this Bastillodon, and he managed to break him. But the problem with Lizardman dinosaurs is it's not good enough just to break them. You have to kill them, because otherwise cold-blooded, in this case, which happened in this case as well, will always bring them back. On top of that, he did try and bring down this Skink Chief, who I believe is the Stegodon one. Who was just really, like, I didn't really use him that much into combat, which I probably should have, but he spent most of his time either chasing off Aurelian Reavers or just shooting people. And he did quite a bit of damage to the dragon, but the dragon had to eat so many regrowths that honestly may have been better used on the Phoenix Guard. But, I mean, this was a super difficult matchup. There's really not a whole lot you can do against Lizardmen in a swamp scenario. But, and for High Elves, Lizardman is definitely a hard matchup. The only thing I could say is that if there had maybe been like 4 units or 3 units of Dragon Princes, and then maybe a lot more Archers, that maybe would have done a lot better. Archers actually can trade pretty efficiently against Skinks and Croxagores, so long as they can be protected by a line of Spearmen. And the thing about this list is that Lizardmen don't tend to chew through lines very efficiently due to their overall low melee attack stat. Lizardmen can tend to take a while when it comes to pushing through stuff. The Slann Mage Priest of Heavens, he's also a really powerful pick. He has a lot of he has a very good mix of damage spells and buff spells. He's probably the best when it comes to a good mix. Like Mazdamundi only has 2 damage spells, both of which are very expensive and only can hit like a certain amount of targets. Like, you know, Arcane Unforging, which is a damage spell, but it's very expensive and doesn't do as much damage as you would want for how much it costs. And then Comet. But this guy's got Comet and Urian's Thunderbolt, Wind Blast, Chain Lightning, Banishment. I mean, that's 5 really powerful damage spells if used in the right scenarios. In addition, Harmonic Convergence and Curse of the Midnight Wind are 2 of like the most efficient buff spells. The only one that's probably better at buffing is maybe the Light Slann with like Bjorna's Time Warp and Foz Protection, but once again, those spells can be pretty expensive. Curse of the Midnight Wind is probably the best debuff spell in the game, at least in my opinion. But anyway, that'll wrap up my first game against Gabo. We'll cover our next game pretty soon, and there is a lore video that's going to be out very soon that is nearing completion. So I hope you're all doing well, and that'll be it for today. Thanks for watching. Bye, guys.